All right. Thank you guys for being here. Like I said, I got a little bit of a smaller group today. We're giving everybody a chance to jump on here, but we are in for a really great conversation with Carlos Diaz this afternoon. So I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the opportunity to be here with us. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Danielle Berman. I am the founder and CEO of Tackle What's Next, and we offer community and support and a support team for athletes transitioning out of sports. We recreate that sense of team for them and the camaraderie that athletes are really familiar with and help them find purpose and create impact in their lives outside of sports. We do a lot of these live and online events to share stories and advice from athletes and executives like Carlos, who have really helped with specific aspects of the transition. And we run an accountability program for athletes looking for structure and a game plan to achieve their goals. So if this is your first Tackle What's Next event, welcome. We do these quite often. This is one of our last ones of the year. We're closing it out with a really great speaker here, but we host these for athletes and execs on all kinds of topics similar to this one in the financial field, to networking, building a business, career development, and more. Our last workshop of the year is going to be on Friday, November 13th. It's going to be on athlete activism. We are still confirming speakers, but you are already welcome to register for that. We're going to throw the link to the Academy page where you can find all of our upcoming events there. And Kelsey will also throw our newsletter sign up and LinkedIn group sign up in the chat. So I invite you to join the conversation and share what you're working on outside of the game. So those are my quick announcements. I think people are kind of dripping in here. So we have the bulk of everybody probably that'll be joining live here coming on shortly. So I want to get right to it. Today, we are chatting all about what you need to know to really plan for the future in your financial world. Taking control of your finances, from what to ask an investment advisor to the difference between some of these important financial terms. Carlos Diaz is here to help us feel more empowered and ready to take the lead in our finances. And Carlos Diaz is a public speaker, contributor, instructor, and a wealth advisor with MVP Wealth in Orlando, Florida. And he's worked with clients in a lot of areas of financial planning, investment management, tax, estate, and insurance planning as well. And he is a nationally syndicated columnist. He actually had a Market Watch article come out earlier this week, I believe, Carlos, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so we'll find that and drop it in the chat. I know you sent that to me, but he's written for Kiplinger, Market Watch, Forbes, has been quoted and featured in Bloomberg, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, US News, USA Today. Obviously very, very well equipped to educate us here today. And he really has worked a lot with the professional athletes and some of their personal financial needs. Just a couple housekeeping notes. I believe all of you are on mute already. Please do stay on mute. We'd love to have your videos on so we can see you. And we would love to have you guys ask questions throughout the presentation. Drop them in the chat, unmute yourself and ask. We'll make sure that this is a really interactive conversation. And so thank you guys so much for joining. And Carlos, thanks for being here. I'm gonna let you take it away.
All right, Danielle, thank you for having me on, and thank you to Tackling What's Next. Today, what I'm gonna do is a little different. So I've done this presentation before for a little bit more of a professional group. I've done this for accountants, I've done this for attorneys, but we're just taking it down a notch today because especially a lot of people on this call today are in college. You know, they might go pro. This is really geared more towards the professional athlete that is either a rookie or is already in the league or is looking to maybe transition. And so some of the information that you might see is a little bit too much for today. I mean, I enjoy people to get really the principles first before they dive into this type of topic. But really, we're just going to break down financial advisors today, because a lot of times we hear these terms, you know, financial advisors, and we hear wealth managers and wealth advisors, and we're like, wow, is, you know, one person different than the other? And so you'll be able to see exactly, you know, breaking down each individual, who they are, what they may do, what they may sell, etc. And before I get a little bit to about me and the company, what I do want to bring up as well too is the really important part and the real reason why I've taken a strong initiative for the last several years. In fact, there's a documentary that should be coming out that has a lot of this information as well too, but it's been a few years. There's an Ernst & Young study that's out there. It was from 2004 to 2018. It examined the fraud in the sports world. And let me give you the breakdown. 38% was football, which is why I really gear a lot towards football. And football is a very unique sport altogether. And I'll get to that in just couple minutes. Basketball was 29% and baseball was 13%. So if I give you the numbers, fraud accounted in football almost $160 million. Fraud accounted in basketball almost $120 million. And in baseball, it was about $40 million, or excuse me, actually 10 million. I was wrong on that stat. And so the problem that we run into is we have a interesting time period now where, you know, hypothetically the market has been up for the last feasibly 10 years, maybe a little bit less, but we're riding on this roller coaster that we get pitched, and professional athletes especially, they get pitched all these different types of investments. And a lot of times they really don't know what they're getting themselves into. And if they really just started diving into or asking more questions, they might get the answers that they need. But unfortunately they don't, because there's nothing like this out there, especially in the college world. So just a little bit about me. My company is Diaz Wealth. We are a registered investment advisor. The MVP Wealth is a subsidiary of Diaz Wealth. I've been a financial advisor for the last 15 years. I started working for a company that really predominantly dealt with retirees and seniors. And so when I usually say my transition phase, it's gone from, you know, the end to back to almost the beginning. And what I really enjoyed about doing that is that seeing people from all different walks of life. A lot of times I get a lot of financial advisors or people that want to get into the financial industry and reach out to me and say, hey, Carlos, what do I have to do, or what do I do to get into the sports industry? And I would say, one, get a robust type of clientele. Work with a lot of different people. Work with retirees. Work with people that work a job, business owners, etc., individuals. You start getting a lot better feel as to what's out there and how you can be a little different, and you'll notice certain planning techniques that will help you out. But as Danielle said, I'm also a speaker, and I work, like I said, I work a lot with sports agents. I work with a lot of accountants, attorneys. I'm also a nationally syndicated columnist for Kiplinger. I've written for MarketWatch, Forbes. Actually, there's an article that dropped yesterday through MarketWatch. If I have a few minutes, I'll be able to go over that, because in the end, I still do think that articles that come out, although for the most part they are my words, there's still a lot of information that gets suppressed out there in the media. If you want more information about me, you're more than welcome to go to my personal website. It's my name, carlosdiazjr.com. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on all forms of social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The easiest way to get a hold of me, as I always tell everybody, is to call me directly. I'm kind of in that mix there, you know, and as a millennial, but a little bit of old-fashioned as well too, or just send me an email. And then you can connect with my company as well too. This is specifically the sports division. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're actually on LinkedIn, but we'll just leave it there. So, really interesting thing that I want to go over. So in order to understand football players, and in order to understand the profession specifically, you have to know, and there was a Wall Street Journal article that came out in 2016, it's the shrinking shelf life of NFL players. It happens all the time. A lot of the players that we spoke with the last 2 years are no longer employed. They're no longer on a team, or worst case scenario, they're on a practice squad. They're looking for a much bigger opportunity. But if you look at the stat that I took from the article, from 2008 to 2014, the average NFL career dropped in length by about 2.5 years. From 91 until 2008, career lengths were mostly consistent. This is very true. So a lot of times we would say that players are in the league for an average of about 6 years. Well, it's about 3.3 years. And as you can see the breakdown here, you can see that the one that has the most of a revolving door, so to say, is the wide receiver at just 2 years and 2.5 months. And I probably would speculate that this number may have even gone down. Now, are there wide receivers and specifically running backs that have longevity? Absolutely. I mean, a classic example would be Frank Gore. Frank Gore has had a long career, but that's not common. And as you can see, the running back came in second at 2 years and 5 months. the tight end at 2 years and 8 months. And then really we start getting into your quarterbacks and your linemen and linebackers and defensive backs. Those are the ones that have the most longevity at about 3 years, or maybe even a little bit more, 3 years and 8 months specifically for the offensive linemen. If you've been watching the draft, you know this to be true, because a lot of offensive linemen and a lot of linebackers specifically get drafted in the first and second round. And here's another, the Associated Press came out in 2019. The NFL keeps going younger and cheaper. So one of the quotes said, by the time the NFL players reach their third and fourth years in the league, the vast majority are struggling just to hang on because of injuries, or younger, faster, and often cheaper rookies out for their jobs. Very true. As long as we only have really one dominant league, which would be the NFL, then we have this short time frame of players. There's a lot more players than there is demand. And then at the bottom, as you can see, unlike the NBA and MLB, the NFL has very few players with guaranteed contracts. And everyone on this call would know this. Past really first round and maybe even second round, the types of guarantees go down substantially. And it ended saying some might not even get nothing. And there was a study that came out. It went from NFL teams from 96 to 2003. It was looked at retirement and bankruptcy specifically, because a lot of times we look at the ESPN 30 for 30 broke, and we look at it as the statistics for professional athletes. And to a degree, I would say that probably the ESPN 30 for 30, which is already 8 years away, a lot has changed since that time frame. But I would say that players have gotten a lot smarter. But the problem still lies specifically with rookies that get tied in with specific financial advisors and essentially are married to them, and then get wrong advice. They may not find out until it's later on in life. But with this study, it found that after at least the first 12 years of retirement, you had bankruptcy rates that were somewhat higher. 12 years is the magic number. But of course, this number is going to vary all over, because obviously if you had somebody that was a 6th, 7th round draft pick or an unrestricted free agent, then they may not have a lot of, well, obviously they wouldn't have a lot of guarantees, one, but two is there would not be a lot of income. And for the most part, they may or may not be getting too much into the investment aspect of things. They're probably just looking at more of the budgeting and savings aspect. This is my collage. So when we look at statistics and going broke, you can look at all these stats and you can look at all these different things, but really there's one thing that shines out, and I'm going to leave it in just a few minutes. But we have players from all walks of life. So we have, for instance, Trent Richardson was one, and Phil Buchanan, that were the victims of their own families that took money from them. I believe Trent Richardson was about $1.6 million. And then, of course, we have the stat from CBS News, 1 in 6 NFL players filed for bankruptcy. Now, there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. But really, if you look at the top, the hand that's giving the money, that is predominantly the worst one out of all of them. It's the rogue or the shady financial advisor that is in the middle of just really making or enriching themselves and really doesn't care much about the athlete at all. And if you see kind of center at the bottom, we have probably the largest Ponzi scheme in NFL history, Jeff Rubin, which I will get a little bit more into detail in a few minutes. But if you look at that case specifically, went more towards the private equity side of the business. And a lot of times people will say, well, you know, this guy was an independent guy and he really didn't work under a large brokerage firm. And a lot of times I hear the terminology of, well, if my financial advisor works for a large firm, we mitigate a lot of the fraud. That's absolutely false. I do not like that stat whatsoever. It doesn't matter whether your financial advisor works for a big firm or a little firm. I'm going to put it to you this way. If your financial advisor works for a big firm and you're with the notion as a professional athlete that you can just go off and just sue them, and because they're a big firm, they have deeper pockets, they have more money to pay back on a potential claim, you are 100% totally wrong, because that means they're a larger firm, they have more funds, they have better attorneys to defend their case. And if you actually look at a lot of the cases that are out there, and I love doing this specifically over the weekends, just shows you how I spend some of my time specifically, but these cases, they get settled for pennies on the dollar. So that's a really important key aspect. But, you know, a lot of people still do remember 30 for 30 broke. And there are some instances on here, as you can tell, where, you know, players spent their money. But I would probably say for the most part that bad financial advisors have a big play into the failure of professional athletes. I should not use that as a excuse out, because for people that are on this call today and for people that will see this call later on, I really talk about the 3 levels of failure. And the first level is education. Education is why you're here today. And that's why we get financial literacy. I'm a big proponent of financial literacy. But the second level of failure is laziness. So we get this education and we don't apply it. So if education is great, but if you're not doing anything with it, what's going to happen? And really you can either look at it as a third or fourth. You have the third level, which is ignorance. And you can really even throw in another aspect in there, or it could be the fourth, which is arrogance. And what happens is you're getting this information, you're supplying yourself with the information. You're getting people that are saying, hey, by the way, you maybe want to watch out for this specific person because they have a lot of complaints on their record, or whatever it may be, but you still end up deciding to go with that financial advisor. So ignorance and arrogance are probably the third level. And this was an article that came out. It's a little bit old now. It's Yahoo Sports 2012. And it really detailed how this web came about. Bottom line, and this was available in 2012. It's almost the same exact thing that was available back then, except it's a little bit more updated, the websites. And we're going to go over those websites as well too. If the professional athletes that were dealing with Jeff Rubin had just gone to BrokerCheck, which in the quote there is publicly available on the FINRA website, they would have known that he had a claim for $40,000, that he had some prior issues. And for the most part, if you just do your quick due diligence, which I'm going to show you how to do that, you're going to mitigate, you're going to get rid of a lot of these problems that are potentially there. And then if we do have time, I am going to dive in a little bit into the NFL regulations as well too, specifically the NFLPA. Here's an article that I was quoted in, and let me go backwards here. Let me see if I can go backwards. Here we go. There. Sorry about that. So this article, Going for Broke, many pro athletes still struggling with finances. All of a sudden, you've got 15 million in your bank account and 5 million in debt, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself. This is someone else's quote. Now your $15 million dips to $7.5 million. And then you're asked to pay child support, spousal support, alimony, and now your $7.5 million just went to zero. And now you still have $5 million in debt. So just think about that for a minute. My quote was, they don't know how they're invested. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know if they've been overcharged in fees. They just have no clue. The biggest part for professional athletes, and specifically in professional football, is they have someone that is their guy, but that's about it. If we really define the term financial advisor, we know that it's just a person who is employed to provide financial services or guidance to clients. That's kind of a really vague term if you think about it, because there are people that are out there that are not licensed. There are people that are barely licensed, or there are people that just have a type of license, and we'll get into that, specifically the insurance license, that are out giving financial advice. Essentially, there's at least over 50 different licenses, if not really more. Someone can just have a banking license, an investment banker license, and in one specific scenario that I've noticed, they're calling themselves a financial advisor. The part that I like to bring up is the FINRA study. This is really important. It has nothing to do with professional athletes, but really professional athletes fall underneath this category. And it was December of 2019. It was called an Investors in the United States study. You can get the link at the bottom, or you can look it up yourself. If you look at it, 30% were able to answer more than half of a 10-question quiz correctly. These are regular people. So on the level of financial literacy and issues with financial advisors, this is just not a professional athlete problem. This is an America problem altogether. But 46% thought past performance was a good indicative of future performance. Now let's apply that really with a professional athlete. It's intensified even more. 14% thought they didn't pay investment fees. This happens a lot with professional athletes specifically. 17% didn't know what they were paying in fees. That's very common as well too. And less than 10% used BrokerCheck. These are average, everyday Americans. Look how low these numbers are. Now imagine with professional athletes. Let's look at the makeup. So in general, and again, I don't want to dive too much into the weeds here, but let's break down financial advisors and their licensing. You have some which are really classified as brokers. They're regulated by the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. I'm just going to call them FINRA for short. You have insurance agents. They are not financial advisors, but I just need to tell you that they're regulated by their state's insurance departments. And then you have investment advisors. They're regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC. The important thing to know is that the majority of financial advisors out there are a mix-up, or what they call a dual advisor. They hold multiple licenses, and they are governed under FINRA and the SEC. I always say this is the two-hat scenario. You have one hat, which is the fiduciary hat, and you have the other hat, which they call the suitability hat. The suitability hat means that that's what happens in those cases where they get settled for pennies on the dollar. It's because when they go to court, their company, their large company, will say, you know, in this particular instance, we were wearing our sales hat. And, you know, really the client should have known about that. You know, we have all the brochures and all the disclosures out there. They should have really known about it. And that's where the client, specifically professional athletes, end up losing out. Here's all really the most common licenses that are out there. You have the Series 6, you have the Series 7, the 63, the 65, and the 66. I'm going to give you my license as well in just a minute, but let me tell you the difference between all of these. Essentially, the 6 and the 7 are very similar. Really, the 6 is just more for mutual funds and what they call variable contract, variable annuities, variable life insurance products. It's more for the insurance. So anybody that works for what they call a captive insurance company. These are insurance agents that work for maybe Northwestern Mutual. I was at New York Life for about 6 months because they said one thing and they did another. These are the same people that work at these companies. These are where you go there and no matter what, their products are always going to be the best. The 7 is just really an upgrade, stocks, bonds, etc. The 63 is just really to get more into the investment advisory world, but I am 65 licensed. I'm what they call a investment advisor of a registered investment advisor. So I'm an investment advisor of Diaz Wealth. We provide fee only or for a percentage of assets under management. Really, when we look at from the conflicts of interest, we don't sell products. So we don't sell stocks. If we recommend stocks, it's because it has to do with the client. It does not have to do with just selling things to an athlete. But if you look at the makeup, and we'll get into some statistics, but the majority of financial advisors out there, I say typically about 95% of financial advisors, specifically in the sports industry, are nothing more than glorified salespeople. And this is the makeup of it. The insurance agents, of course, they have insurance licenses. The investment advisors only have a Series 65 license. That's what we call the fiduciary duty, where we really get twisted in a lot of these words as fiduciary. And in fact, as I was getting ready for this, I had the radio in the background, and I had this company that came on that says, you know, we've been fiduciaries for over 40 years, but guess what? If you look them up, you will see they have multiple licenses, and they work for what they call a broker dealer. So that word is really misused the majority of time. Brokers sell products. These include the banks and a lot of the big firms that are out there. You can read the firms, your Merrills, your Morgans, your Raymond James, etc. These are the people that are getting the NFLPA financial advisor certification or registration, excuse me. You have your captive insurance agents. They work for big companies, New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, AXA, etc. You have your investment advisors, totally different. The problem is there's not really one specific place, although I'm going to show you where to go look for people. There is not a place where it recommends financial advisors. In fact, a lot of the places that recommend financial advisors are .coms. They're not .govs. So there's some sort of financial incentive. Just know that really out there today, there's not something that is as clear cut. It's up to you, the person, you, the financial advisor, excuse me, the professional athlete that needs to be doing your own due diligence. And that's why you're here today. Here's my breakdown. If a financial advisor has one of the 3 licenses, they're selling investment products for commissions, a Series 6, 7, or 63. The 65, they're receiving what they call fees for investment advice. A lot of times that's where you hear like a percent or a percentage, assets under management. People with an insurance license, they sell insurance products for commissions. On a side note, I probably wouldn't have a problem if people are willing to disclose what they make, but for the most part, they're not disclosing what they make. Or they might say, oh yeah, I'll disclose what I make, but then they end up never doing that. So here's the breakdown again. The people that sell products are under FINRA. Your fees, these are more or less, they work like an attorney, either by the hour for a financial plan or for a percentage of assets. They're your investment advisors. And those with insurance licenses are insurance agents. Insurance agents, again, they're not financial advisors. And the problem again is that if you have a mesh of all these different licenses, you really don't know how clean cut they are because they've been mudding up the water, so to say. The terms, this gets me for the majority of the time because we have all these different types of fancy terms that are out there. We have financial planner, wealth manager, wealth advisor, wealth management advisor. Really, at the end of the day, we're just financial advisors. Actually, let me just stop it right here and just say this. There are really only 2 types of technically financial advisors. You have your financial advisor that really focuses on developing a plan and does monitoring. And then on the other side, you have what they call a portfolio manager, is the person that's actually doing the investing. So in my structure, I lean on other registered investment advisors that will do the investing because I cannot do all the tasks that are out there. It's really important to realize this. If you're going to a broker or you're going to a bank, they have this package all under one roof. You're not getting any type of special advice or special service. You're just getting whatever's underneath their roof. So there's really only 2 types. Your financial advisor, which works with you, the person, and then you have the portfolio manager, which is more of a behind the scenes and just works on the investments or the investment aspect of things. It really just burns me up when I hear terms like senior or private or director. they have absolutely no significance whatsoever. So if you hear the terms like senior wealth advisor or private wealth manager, it's just really just to sound special. That's all it is. Because at the end of the day, we all have more or less the same licenses. Some of us have other types of licenses or more, but at the end of the day, there's nothing really special or specific. If you just go through the normal course of life and you've worked with a lot of or a robust different type of clients, then you're going to get the same experience and you're going to get to the same level as someone that's just using these terms. And of course, the majority of financial advisors that are out there are just nothing more than salespeople. That's it. I just did some really quick investigating, and on my other presentation, it was when I started doing it was in June of 2020, so just a few months ago. I suspect that there hasn't been really much of a change, but since then, there's only really been about 214 designations. The education business is a $1 million business that's out there. People that are experts, so to say, they even have a really hard time distinguishing between all the designations that are out there. The most well-known ones, of course, are your certified financial planner and your chartered financial analyst. But if you look at that, again, it's a business because between universities and the organization itself, their fees range at a minimum anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000. And in some instances, it could even be over $30,000. So it is a business. Another thing too is that brokers that include banks and what they call independent firms. So a lot of times you'll hear this thing where they say, oh, I'm independent. It means nothing. You have to know the licensing that's behind that person to know if they really truly are independent. And independent to me signifies as an investment advisor. Now, independent can mean a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, if you have your own company in an office that's not inside of a bank, but you still work for the same brokerage firm or the same company that that bank works for as well too, it's the same thing. And then we have the insurance companies. It's the same thing. We can all put a label on something. Essentially, my company, MVP Wealth and Diaz Wealth, we can say that we're independent. But at the end of the day, if we're affiliated with firms, or let's just say if we were affiliated with Merrill Lynch, then really what does the name do? The name does nothing at all to it. It's just a shell on top of the real core of it. There's a study that came out. This was in 2016. It was called Building a Wealth Management Practice. It was by IT Group. The link's at the bottom. And what they did, they went out and they measured, because a lot of times we have this notion that if someone has a CFP, the NFLPA, by the way, has fallen underneath that, where now they are requiring people to have a CFP or a CFA. And actually, let me back up a little bit as I get into this study. Here's something really important that you need to distinguish specifically with the NFLPA. The CFP, again, focuses on financial planning, which is what professional athletes need. Someone that has a CFA is really more geared towards doing the actual investing, not the financial planning. So if you as a professional athlete are going to someone that is using the CFA, which by the way is a very highly coveted designation as well too, but you're going to a CFA and you're looking for financial planning, guess what? They really are not going to be able to offer that to you, because that's not at the core of what their designation and most likely their business model is meant to do. So let's get back to this study that came out. It measured CFP professionals versus other advisors that are out there. And so I distinguish myself as saying that I am not a CFP. I am not pursuing the CFP. I really look at things, and I really look at financial advisors. You can bring a lot of value to the table depending on the education and how you seek information and how you do things. Because at the end of the day, we could probably see that the majority of this model is a very cookie cutter model. And if you see from the study, you'll notice that even if the advisor was a CFP professional or was not a CFP professional, there was not anything special between either one of them, meaning that it's not like a CFP had less complaints. They had the same level of complaints as people that were non-CFP. So if someone brings up that discussion, that's off the table. The other thing too that you need to know is that at least 85% of people that receive the CFP, they work for a broker dealer. So they work for the banks and they'll work for those large firms that I mentioned before. So if you're looking for somebody because they have the CFP, but they're going to give you the same cookie cutter advice, what is that at the end of the day? You're not really going anywhere on that. And my final point here is I like to use math as my reasoning for a lot of different things. More doesn't equal better. Just because you have someone that has a lot of licenses, and I see this a lot specifically in the professional athlete community, they have a lot more licenses. It does not mean that they're special or they're doing anything better. In fact, they probably have a lot more incentive to sell you as a professional athlete and really a lot more conflicts of interest. We'll go over those. Let's look at this. So if you look at their disclosure forms, and all you have to do is you have to ask these firms for these forms. They're not going to most likely volunteer this. Or you can go out and do a search. So for instance, I probably need to change the company here that I'm going after. So let's just say Morgan Stanley. If we just typed in Morgan Stanley conflicts of interest and maybe put the words PDF or just Morgan Stanley conflicts of interest or whoever, it doesn't really matter. Raymond James, Edward Jones, etc. It doesn't matter. You're going to find their form that has the conflicts of interest. Now this, I specifically took out the names of the companies, but these are the large companies that are out there. And if you look at it, it says right here, they get paid on transaction fees like commissions, other types of sales compensation, mutual funds, etc. Revenue sharing agreements. This is kind of a new term if you've never heard about it before. It means if they sell a lot of bulk of one particular product, the company gets also an additional incentive. It's right there. I highlighted it in red. Here's another one. It says advisors receive, so this conflict can come from compensation we or our advisors receive from you on specific investments or advisory services, or it may come from the compensation we or our advisors receive from product sponsors and third-party providers as a result of your purchase of specific investments or advisory services. What the heck does that mean? It means that they're receiving all these additional forms of compensation from different people. Now, they put it in really fancy language or in a way that you look at it and you say, wow, I don't know what that means. I'm just going to keep going. Just know these forms are about 8 pages. They can be a little shorter. I've seen some that are 60 pages. Here's a revenue sharing example. It just says that certain funds and share classes within a particular fund family. In addition, not all mutual funds pay revenue sharing. As a result, we have an incentive to include funds on our platform and recommend funds that pay revenue sharing and or pay a higher rate. There it is, black and white. They are telling you that the companies that pay the firm a revenue sharing agreement, they are going to push those companies first. That to me is specifically in the financial sector. That is corruption 101. And that's the problem with the financial sector, is that there is corruption and we have all these different rules that were supposed to come out. So specifically, there's something called Regulation BI, Regulation Best Interest, that really did nothing. And in fact, if you look at some of the articles, if you're suing one of these large companies, it actually will help them even more. So that's out the door. And then we used to have something called the Department of Labor, the fiduciary rule. Let me explain how that applies to professional athletes. So with professional athletes, the majority of the money that they receive is what they call non-qualified. It's outside of retirement plans or programs, 401k, your IRA, etc. So if an athlete is receiving all this compensation and is going out and investing it, the Department of Labor fiduciary rule did not even help them whatsoever. It just helped regular Americans that had the majority of their money in retirement plans. So just to know that specifically with professional athletes, you have Americans in general need to do their due diligence, but specifically professional athletes need to do a lot more due diligence because they're compensated a totally different way than normal people. So the only way to really find out how a financial advisor is compensated, you have to look at what they call the Form ADV. Now, the problem with the Form ADV, you have to ask for this, is that if they are not licensed, they don't have the 65 or the 66, they're not going to have this. So you won't know. But if they do have this license, you can ask for the 2A, which is the firm brochure. Again, I'm going a little bit too much into the weeds here. Or you have the 2B, which is the advisor brochure. It's the specific financial advisor. And of course, when you look at financial advisors, you need to take Jerry Maguire's and Rod Tidwell's approach. And I say, show me the ADV, yelling it a little bit more. So looking at the example here, very easy, clean cut. You have fees and compensation. You look at it, it's very clean cut. This is what it should look like. They tell you how much they charge you for financial planning. They tell you how much they charge you if they have, money under their management, or they call it assets under management. That's a technical term, or AUM, the percentage, etc. Or if they're just charging you by the hour. That, to me, specifically with professional athletes, for the most part, there are definitely a bunch that do need the assets under management component, the management, the constant ongoing. But for the most part, they really, and specifically you have your late round draft picks and your unrestricted free agents, they need to only have a financial planning fee. It's as if they went to an attorney and they needed to get a will, and the attorney charged them $300 for the will. Or if they went to an accountant and the accountant charged them $300 for an individual tax return. That's exactly what this is. They don't need all this other stuff that's out there, because a lot of times this is all just additional stuff that they don't need. And if you look at the conflicts of interest again, it just says here that it's based on commissions to be received rather than on a particular client's need. So in this example, as you're seeing, they're telling you, they're saying, we are putting our own needs in front of our clients' needs. Now, it's not everybody, but it's out there, and it's out there, and it's very frequent. Here's another one. I just don't want to go over these for too long. To the extent that there is a difference in compensation, our financial advisors have a financial incentive to recommend certain products or services to you over others. So in this example, now you have to go and dig through the code of ethics, participation, or interest in client transactions, and personal trading. So you have to look at all these additional forms to really get that information about the receipt of compensation for sales of securities and other investment products. And then hopefully this is the last one. You have, I'm going to paraphrase this as much as possible. So this one in specific, it says, this practice presents a conflict of interest because persons providing investment advice on behalf of our firm who are registered representatives. The term registered representative means that they have the Series 6 or the 7 or either one of those, and the 63 and 65. So it's multiple licenses again. Who are registered representatives could have an incentive to affect securities transactions for the purpose of generating commissions. That means that they are buying and selling to make money. Now, a lot of this has kind of gone away, but it's still out there. And there's a lot of, and specifically with mutual funds, I see a lot of professional athletes that they work with these quote unquote free financial advisors. Free financial advisor, I had one gentleman in particular, he said, oh, my financial advisor even wrote me a letter that he doesn't charge me anything. Okay, well, let's look at the statements. What do the statements show? They're Class A funds. Class A funds means that financial advisor makes a commission. Nobody works for free in this business. There's not goodwill. And when you get into the large companies, there's definitely no goodwill. Just know that. Let's look at how to look up a financial advisor, because I talk a lot and I know I'm running out of time here. So really you have three. You have BrokerCheck, the SEC, and then you have investor.gov. It's my personal favorite, by the way, investor.gov. BrokerCheck, I can provide the links. You just go to their website, brokercheck.finra.org. You just type in the financial advisor's name, boom, pulls it up. Here's my example. It'll give you if you have disclosures, how you're licensed. So here we go, as an investment advisor, not as a broker. So in this case, this other gentleman was a broker as well too, sold products. You also have the SEC Investment Advisor Public Disclosure, advisorinfo.sec.gov. Same thing. It will tell you the same exact thing in just a totally different color scheme. The easiest one though, investor.gov. You go in there, type in the person's name, it tells you right there. And then finally, I want to get into the questions to ask a financial advisor, because I always feel as if you need to ask the particular questions. How are you paid? So if they are an hourly fee, a retainer, a percentage of assets under management, you need to know this. And a lot of this, you need to get it documented. And there's a specific form that I provide specifically for athletes that are working with somebody that's telling them that they're free. I give them this document that will go out, and essentially they present to their advisor, and the advisor will fill it out, and they will give it as a good faith back to their client. Do you know that probably about 95% or more of those times, they don't fill it out? They always find a way to kind of get around it, so to say. Oh, my manager doesn't allow me to do this. Those are the types of financial advisors you need to stay away from. You need to know if they have any kind of incentives, because there's bonuses, trips, marketing, reimbursements. There's so much stuff that's out there. Do you have any existing or current complaints? Another problem that we have in the financial industry, and this is why I say to people, and specifically to professional athletes, there's no real one way of getting a clear answer. There's been something that's called expungement, where financial advisors have actually gone out and they have cleaned up their records in the last few years. They have found favorable judges, they've cleaned up the records, so complaints that used to be on there, they're no longer there. But a lot of times I think that if you start asking these questions, you really start getting a feel for the financial advisor. And really, if you get that gut feeling as if something going on here, then really you need to get a second or third or fourth opinion. Does your firm receive revenue sharing or sell any proprietary investments? The broker dealers, those big companies that I gave the names before, they sell proprietary investments. Their main obligation is to sell those first because it provides them additional compensation. Do you operate under a fiduciary or suitability standard? The system is unfortunately, again, rigged. So the word fiduciary is really not represented well at all. A lot of people use the term fiduciary when they're not. So I would just say, again, connect with me. I'm going to start taking some questions. And actually what I was going to do is I was going to share one of my articles that just came out yesterday. Hopefully this is the one right here. So unfortunately, this is exactly what happens when you work with media and you want to give the right information that's out there, but unfortunately, their obligation is not to giving necessarily correct information all the time. So I really posed a lot of different things, and I did reach out to the NFLPA, and we looked at the advisor list, because the approved advisor list, for the most part, I would probably say at least 85%, if not even more, probably even in the 90s. They're all affiliated with broker dealers. So the term fiduciary, and again, when they start throwing these terms like I'm a CFP, all these other things, it doesn't apply at the end of the day, because if we look at the whole construction of how the financial system is organized right now, there's a lot of mismanagement, one. And then two is there's a lot of way to kind of game the system. And this is exactly what's going on. It's kind of gaming the system in a particular way. You're locking out particular financial advisors from the program. Now, I don't want to be part of the program whatsoever, but you're locking people out. Originally, I did want to be part of it many years ago, but you're locking people out of the system that are very qualified, but because they don't have these certain things, again, education is a big business. you're just locking out good advisors, and you're just really exposing professional athletes, you, to the wrong ones or potentially the wrong ones. Now, the examples that I gave were a little bit outdated. They have been in the last 4 years. But the interesting thing, and specifically with Aaron Parthamer, is that he's still going out there and he's still showing his CFP designation certificate. And if you look at how he's doing things, he's saying that he didn't do anything wrong. And to a degree, that's incorrect. So as the years go by, we're really going to start seeing what is happening and what's going on and who is defrauding who. But the problem inside of the NFL altogether is that a lot of times professional athletes, they don't want to raise a red flag, or they don't want to sue anybody because they don't want to feel that shame that they were duped. And that's the wrong way to look at it, because if we keep allowing people to do bad things in our system, then that corruption will still keep going on. So I just, break down the fiduciary versus suitability, which is what I went into today. And I will tell you this: we shouldn't get hung up on designations and titles, because at the end of the day, it's not going to protect you. It'll protect you up until a certain extent, but altogether, you guys need to be well equipped, well educated, and actually apply the information a lot more. So that's really about it. I don't know if anybody wants to discuss my article in particular, but Danielle, if you want to take some particular questions, I'm more to open it up.
Great. Well, thank you for that really detailed presentation. I think it was really helpful to clarify some of these terms and different licenses and all these numbers. I think that'll be really helpful for everyone here and watching later on. If anyone on the call has questions, please feel free to unmute and ask them or drop them in the chat. I had a couple sent to us beforehand, and one of them was from one of our college athletes who said, I'm not making a ton of money, obviously, right now. Do I need a financial advisor? And if not, at what point do I need to start thinking about getting a financial advisor? Is there a specific income level that, you should start to think about, oh, maybe I need someone to help me manage this?
That's a really great question. I'm glad you brought that up. I do address this question quite a bit. The bottom line is, I would say you need a financial advisor if they're going to provide something of value, something of quality. I've said this time and time again. Do college athletes need financial advisors? Absolutely not. Should college athletes be really picking and choosing one? Absolutely not. It happens a lot. And the problem that we run into is, again, getting back, I hate using the word so much, but it is what it is. We need to call it what it is. It's the corruption. I provide you a financial incentive, and so now you're mine, so to say. And so for a lot of times, for $10,000 specifically, or $5,000, or in some instances, a cell phone, now you're committed. Now you're married to this person. So no, you don't need one. And in fact, if you look at different studies where they say that our brain is not fully developed until the age of 25, I would probably say that unless you are in the first round, or maybe even the second round, where you have a large bonus or you have a large salary, then for the most part, actually, instead of working with somebody that I would consider is shady, or somebody that's going to sell them a bunch of stuff that may not even help them out whatsoever, I would much rather see a person go off on their own and learn what I call a trial by error. That's how confident I am, and how I'm just basically disgusted with the system altogether. So to answer the question, no, you don't need a financial advisor. Specifically when you're in college, you definitely don't need a financial advisor. If your parents have a financial advisor, they may be under a totally different system, again, because the financial industry is always constantly changing. So I would just say, don't really peg off of the idea of, oh, I'm just going to use who my parents use, because again, they may be older, their education level has probably gone out the door, and they're not doing things from a new world perspective. They're still doing things that they were doing 20, 30 years ago. It's the part where people just become completely stagnant. But again, you do not need a financial advisor. The important thing, what you do need is you need to budget and save. I would probably say that for the majority of athletes that are out there, and specifically, you know, if you're in a 5th to 7th round unrestricted free agent specifically, I would say maybe 4th, 3rd, and 2nd, possibly. But at least for the first year, that's exactly what you need to focus on, is just really the budget and the savings. You definitely do need to max out the 401k program that they offer, because the NFLPA does offer a great 401k. So that's one. You definitely need to do that. But two is, you have this trial by error thing where instead of just getting yourself involved with a financial advisor that just wants to sell you a bunch of stuff and not really out there looking for you, you can just go off and learn. You have all these companies now that they're offering trades for free. Why not do that? Why not learn? Because the saying that I always give is that no one is going to care more about your money than you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it ties into the other question that we got beforehand from another athlete, I guess, aspiring. I don't know what sport they're playing, but aspiring to take better control of their finances. And they said, if I have never had an advisor or even really invested before, what can I do to start building my own portfolio? Do you recommend things like Acorns or Robinhood?
Yeah, you know, the great part about it is that a lot of these big companies that are out there, so specifically like TD Ameritrade, Fidelity, they are kind of like the do-it-yourself or Vanguard. They're very low cost, and a lot of them you can even buy and sell stocks for zero, nothing, free. And I hate to use the word free because really nothing is free, but they're no cost. It doesn't cost you anything. So that's a great way. I mean, learn the system, be a student of it. I always say, don't be the type of person. I hear this a lot of times. I kind of hate hearing the same thing, but it's the, well, you know, I'm a football player. I want to dedicate myself to the sport and just doing my training. And I want to have somebody that just takes care of everything for me. You know what happens when somebody is just taking care of something for you? They take care of it, but not in the way that you're thinking. They take care of it by robbing you blindly because you're not educated enough, so to say, to really see what's going on. And when you question them, their first thing is they have an automatic defense. So when you're not questioning them, when you're not equipped, you're not doing things on your own, you're not seeing things from a real world perspective, you're missing out.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point. The education piece is, I think, what we want to harp on too, is that it's never too early to start learning about this stuff. And I think you did a great job highlighting all of the different things that people can dig into more, the different terminologies, the different licenses, the different ways to look up advisors if they are thinking about bringing somebody on. So I really appreciate that. And I know we are right at 5 o'clock. So I want to just wrap up by saying thank you so much for this really informative presentation, for taking a couple questions from our registrants here. And I just wanted to see if you had anything else you wanted to say to close it out. Otherwise, we will definitely share the links around for everybody to catch the replay. And we're really excited to have you here. So thank you for being a part of the Tackle What's Next community. And thanks for sharing all your great advice and insights here.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for having me on, one. And I would say to people that are watching this, that this is really, again, we went into a little bit more intense detail in this situation, but get educated on a very basic level and, you know, take financial literacy, you know, 101, start learning the ropes, and then start applying this to when you actually have a sizable amount of money, or you came into money and now you're looking at somebody that you need to come in and maybe manage it for you. Because a lot of times, again, in the business, we end up taking advantage of people, unfortunately, just because they're not properly equipped. So get equipped first. But again, I wanted to thank you for having me on. Easiest way to get a hold of me is just by, again, calling me or emailing me. If you have a particular question, I'm not a in-your-face type person. I'll answer it, and I'll just tell you 100%.
Awesome. And we will send your contact information around with the replay video so everyone can just reach out to you directly if they want to set up a time to chat or if they want to learn more. But thank you again for being here. And thank you to the handful of you that were able to join us live today. It was great to have you. And we're really excited to hear your feedback. So you're going to get an email from us asking for you to let us know what you thought, connect with Carlos, connect with us further. But thanks again for you guys tuning in. And Carlos, thanks for being here. We'll see you guys next time. And thanks for coming out.
All right. Thank you again. Have a great week.
You too.